Clear prop.
Star 73 is Cherokee number 2 following twin traffic, 3 mile final, clear subject. 1 Charlie Bravo, exit in runway 25, going 4 mile final.
This is Behind the Prop with United Flight Systems owner and licensed pilot Bobby Doss and his co-host, Major Airline Captain and designated pilot examiner Wally Mulhern. Now let's go Behind the Prop.
What's up, Wally?
Hey, Bobby. How are you?
Fantastic. This week, we're going to answer some questions a little bit different than we have in the past. We are both followers of a Facebook group called Student Pilot Community. I don't know how many users they have, but there's a whole bunch of them. And they ask a lot of really good questions. I'm fairly active in answering those questions and trying to help those student pilots of all varying places of their ratings. And today, we just thought we would go somewhat live and answer some of the questions that are scrolling up on their Facebook feed. If you are a student pilot, it's a pretty good place to go learn more about aviation and student pilot woes, and maybe give a little bit of feedback as you learn things as well. So let's jump right into it. The first question, and all of these questions were asked in the last 24 hours. We are recording today on October the 14th. So if you asked a question between the 13th and the 14th, we're probably going to highlight your question here today. So Carl B. asked a question about logbooks. I'm only 20 hours into my PPL, but have been logging all of my hours electronically so far and had planned on doing only electronic. Today, my instructor suggested I switch to paper logbooks. And if I want to use the electronic, keep using it as a backup. My question really is, if an electronic logbook is automatically backed up and synced to multiple devices and I can print it anytime, export it to different formats, what's the use of doing a paper logbook? And what's the point of keeping it paper and electronic? Again, considering electronic only since it's synced to multiple devices and backed up automatically. So great question, Carl. I think that there's a little bit of a preference bias in some of these thought processes, but I kept a paper logbook through my instrument rating, and then I kind of drew a black line and said, I'm not going to do paper anymore. I'm going all electronic. And then what I did do was go back and re-enter all that, which, by the way, is extremely painful to do, into my electronic logbook, which is 4-flat by choice. And what that gives me is the ability to really quickly run a report of all my summary stuff, keeping up with my currency for multi and single engine and IFR and can I fly at night, those sorts of things. So it's really nice to have the electronic logbook calculate that. It's not too hard to do that in paper. But I also wasn't planning to be a professional pilot of any sort, so I didn't feel like I had to keep something that I might show to an interviewer one day. Seems like a lot of the CFIs at my flight school keep a paper and an electronic logbook. I think they like the paper to be able to use for their interviews, etc. But let's ask the pro. Wally, you've been flying professionally for over 30 years, flying for fun and training for over 40. What is your preference of choice?
Well, my preference, first of all, I have both. I actually use 2 different electronic logbooks, and I also keep a paper logbook. And there's something about reading a paper logbook. Nostalgia. It's like reading a paper book. I have all kinds of electronic books on my iPad. I believe in them. It's really convenient. Wherever I am, I can buy a book, but there's something about having the pages on paper to thumb through. And the one reason why I keep a paper logbook, it's not so much for me, but for people that are going to be around long after I'm gone. And I say that because my father was a pilot, and I have my father's logbooks, and I just was digging around and looking at them several weeks ago, actually, and I found his World War II glider pilot logbook, and I found a couple of entries that were very, very meaningful to me. I have an entry from the D-Day invasion, where he flew from England to France as part of the Normandy invasion, and that's written down in his logbook. Several months after that, he was part of another glider pilot operation that was actually bigger than D-Day. It was called Operation Market Garden, and his glider was actually shot down over Belgium. They shot the tow rope, and they crash landed in Belgium. And so I have this. I have documentation of it from that my father wrote in a logbook, and so. I look at that. When I look at it, I get chills just looking at it, knowing what he did. And I haven't been shot down. I haven't been part of a major invasion yet, but it is kind of, something that my kids, grandkids will have long after I'm gone. They can go back through and look at this stuff. So that's the main reason why I do it. Now, as far as electronic logbooks, with my airline, I use a logbook called Flight Crew iLog. It's extremely convenient because it will log into my airline scheduling system. It will import my trips. All I have to do is write down the time that we left and the time that we landed, or actually enter, I should say. It knows where I'm going. It knows what aircraft I'm in. It knows who my crew members are. So it's extremely, extremely convenient. For my general aviation flying, I use a logbook called SafeLog Pilot Logbook, and there's a lot of good ones out there. And I use that for all my general aviation stuff, including my check rides. There are some glitches that you have to be careful with these logbooks. For instance, this SafeLog logbook, every time I logged a check ride in that, at some point I noticed that all of a sudden it was taking the entire time of the check ride and logging actual instrument time. So I had to go back for several years of check rides and remove actual instrument time from this logbook. So sometimes they do get a little glitchy. You got to be careful with them. One thing that's really nice about the electronic logbooks is, let's say you read about a particular airplane. You hear about an airplane up in Nebraska that makes a forced landing on a highway, and you're sitting there and you're thinking, gee, 123 Bravo Charlie, that really sounds really familiar. If you've got an electronic logbook, it's real convenient to go back and type in 123 Bravo Charlie and do a search, and you go, geez, yeah, I flew that airplane 32 years ago. So that's kind of cool to be able to do that. So as an examiner, I really prefer paper logbooks. I like to be able to thumb through it. Electronic logbooks are perfectly fine, however. They're legal. It just seems easier for me to look at a paper logbook, but there's no, I don't, if an applicant comes in with an electronic logbook, there's certainly no bias or anything against them. It's perfectly fine.
Nothing regulatory, of course, and again, like you said, perfectly legal. I think it is a personal preference for sure, but I think that I guess fundamentals are important to me in anything that I teach and learn, and the fundamental of writing it down and learning what those columns really mean as a private pilot student is important. And I think I might duplicate both, because it would be nice to, what I don't have is I don't have all my previous, my private and my instrument stuff isn't signed in ForeFlight. So I do have to keep these 2 copies forever. And the thing that I would suggest is if you do paper, and that is your paper logbook, and you don't get signatures in an electronic logbook, man, take a bunch of pictures, make copies, put them in different cloud storage devices, put in a safety deposit box. If you want to be a pro, you don't want to lose 100 hours of flight time that you can't ever reprove that you really flew, that was logged or dual, something like that.
And I would say this, take your logbook seriously. And I'm talking about a paper logbook. If you're doing a paper logbook, I had a an applicant just a couple of weeks ago come in, and his name wasn't even in the logbook. So I actually faulted the instructor because the instructor had signed off multiple flights in a logbook that didn't even have a name in it. So somebody could have stolen this logbook, put their name in it, gone to a flight school out of state, and said, "Yeah, I've got 65 hours. Here it is," and it would have looked legit.
That's some pretty valuable logbook, for sure. The next question came from a Joey J. Hey, it's been a dream to become a commercial airline pilot since I was a kid. I'm exiting the military in January 2022. I have a full post 9/11 GI Bill to use. I had my heart set on San Jose State to get my BA and ratings and certifications, but now I'm not sure. I'm also not sure if I want to get my bachelor's degree, and maybe just become a pilot. If there's any advice, I'd greatly appreciate it. I'm willing to move anywhere in the U.S. So I get this question a lot at the flight school. Then I'll let you chime in there, Wally. But we do veterans training here, and we accept GI Bill money. It's a great tool for veterans. Thanks for everyone's service, and you should maximize your GI Bill. Normally, colleges have the ability to consume multiple years of your GI Bill awards, whereas a vocational school like a flight school can only do annual benefits at a time, kind of like a year of tuition at a time. So you might go slower if you just go to a vocational school without the relationship to a college. Here we're affiliated with Liberty. We've done a number of shows on Liberty and the value of Liberty. Liberty trains a lot of veterans. The only rule that the VA really has is that you have to go get your private pilot certificate out of your own pocket. You have to have a second-class medical so that you can prove that you can fly commercially one day. And then you can get your commercial instrument CFI. You can get as many ratings as you want as long as the school's legal and has the VA approval to do so. And I would highly suggest that you look at a college organization like Liberty or others that can maybe help you consume all of your benefits in a shorter window of time. And then I think everyone knows this now, and we've had recruiters, we've had people on the phone that help people get hired. In our podcast episodes, you need a degree if you want to be a professional pilot. It's no ifs, ands, or buts. You will not work for a major airline without a college degree. Is that a true statement, Wally?
Quite honestly, I don't know where most of the airlines stand right now, but it is a supply and demand thing. When I was hired in the late 80s, no, you did not need a college degree, but you're going to be more competitive if you do. I know the commuters right now do not require it. But is a bachelor's degree, an associate's degree. I mean, an associate's degree is going to put you above someone without a degree. A bachelor's degree is going to put you above an associate's degree. So I would say it's something to definitely work towards, and strive for that, definitely.
The other thing I'll say to that point is with Liberty and our flight school, you can get something called a restricted ATP, and that's another reason to get ahead of the seniority curve, right? So if you get a restricted ATP at 1,000 hours and can start your seniority 500 hours before the next guy or girl, that's a lot of seniority, right? That's probably 6-7 months of time. That's going to be valuable in 35 years for that pilot for sure. No question. A very quick follow-up to that question was another person that asked, do I need that degree? And I think, we've answered that question. It is a pretty smart idea if you have the time and the funds and the ability. And I think double dipping, meaning taking college while you're taking your flight training, is a great way to kill two birds with one stone. But it also doesn't have to be an aviation degree. I've talked to many, many recruiters that just say, if you want it, go get a business degree and then learn how to fly. It's kind of like a fail-safe or a backup maybe if you lose your medical and need to work or want to work in a different career. That's the way you would do it. The next question comes from Mayhan C. Let's say during my check ride that I get turned all around from doing all the maneuvers and everything, and I forgot which direction is back to my home airport. Without using a GPS, how could you navigate yourself back to the home airport? I'm thinking in this scenario to call up approach and be like, approach, this is Cessna 12345. We're Cessna 172, currently 3,200 feet, and need to head back to airport ABC. Can you provide an appropriate heading and altitude? Wally, what do you think of that one?
Yeah, well, one of the required elements of a check ride, at least a private check ride, is a lost scenario, and that is, that's something that we do. And I will typically say to the applicant, okay, we're lost. Let's head back to our home airport. And I will tell them what resources are available to them. I'll usually tell them I will be ATC. At this point, we probably don't really want to get on the radio and call up approach and tell them we're lost, but I will tell them that I will be ATC, and we'll just go through the scenario. And the first thing I would like them to do is to actually look around and try to figure out where we are. And it's very possible that you're in a place where there may be not a lot of landmarks. Maybe you have reduced visibility. But, if you're somewhat familiar with the area, there might be some big landmarks. Hey, I'm west of the big lake, so that tells me that to get home I probably need to go in this direction. Using VORs that might be out there. But as a worst case scenario, yeah, you get on the radio, you call approach. It's always nice to be able to tell approach approximately where you are. Say, hey, I think I'm northwest of the big city, approximately 30 miles. And I as the examiner, I will act as ATC, and I'll say, okay, squawk 1200, Roger, squawking 1200. And I'll say, okay, Cessna 12345, radar contact. You are 32 miles northwest of your home airport. Turn left heading 130. But that's using your resources. That's real world. That's what you would do.
Yep. I think the key is understanding the VORs. There's probably an option to take advantage of VORs in your area, and hopefully you're learning some of that as you go through your training. I think if you have a tool like a ForeFlight, I know the question says without GPS, but something that can provide you situational awareness. And then I didn't think of this early on when I was a private student and probably even into my instrument time, but now I've gone west so many times from here that it is a little second nature that I don't care how far and how long and how much practice I've been doing. I'm pretty sure if I turn back east, I'm going to be heading towards my home airport. And then that gives me just some situational awareness that these VORs make more sense. What radials am I on for these two VORs? I kind of can position where I'm at on this sectional map, whether it be paper or electronic. So hopefully you'll learn some tips and tricks around doing that. But yes, climb and confessing is always a good idea if you don't have any other option to be able to get back to where your home airport is.
Yeah, what I will just to follow up to that, Bobby. What I will do with a lot of applicants is we end up northwest of Houston a lot on our check rides, and I'm talking about private check rides, doing maneuvers, and I might, depending on what we did on the cross country portion. Hopefully that's done with pilotage and not electronics. I will typically say to the applicant, okay, we're lost. Let's get back to our home airport. And I will say everything is available to you. And a lot of times what I see is their first inclination is to go to the electronics. And a lot of times I'll stop them. I'll say, well, before you do that, in general, which direction is the airport? And between us and downtown is the airport. And if you could see the buildings of downtown, man, if you just aim toward the buildings, I'd say 80% of the time, the person knows the general direction to the airport. They know it's about 100, heading 130, something like that. And they'll start hitting that. And I'll go, yeah, that's exactly right. So, the electronics is great, but, use some common sense.
Sometimes I think we maybe make it harder than we have to, right? Just point the plane back to where you came from. Interesting. Yeah, good points. So next, Andreas F. Looking for bifocal sunglasses to make reading the instruments easier. I'm 46 and I have perfect vision but need 1.5 lens correction for reading. Carrying and flipping between the reading glasses and sunglasses is annoying and cumbersome. Any recommendations? And I think there were a lot of cheap options on this feed for this answer, but this is a home run question for me. I also need readers. For years didn't need them on my medical. Now it's a requirement for me to have them in the cockpit with me. And what I did was I found a great tool. I bought them on Amazon. They're called Hydrotech Bifocal Stick-Ons. And what they are is they're a little piece of plastic that are made to be the corrective that you need. So they go from anywhere from 1.0, 1.25, 1.5, blah, on and on and on, up. And all they do is they use a drop of water to place them on the sunglasses, or a piece of clear glass if you want to, or maybe even safety glasses if you need to. They will stick on anything. And what's super, super cool about them is you can take them off. So you really press them on with a drop of water. That water dries. It creates a vacuum seal. Mine have been on my pair of sunglasses for over 2 years. You can trim the plastic. It's just made out of almost like a rubber. You can trim them, so if you want to make them fit differently on the glass, you can. You can put them on two different. You can remove them and put them on different sunglasses. When you need a different or stronger lens, you can just order another strength, peel those off, and put those on your glasses so your sunglasses last forever. Do not go buy prescription lenses on anything, as far as I'm concerned, that needs to be tinted. If you don't, I don't use polarized glasses in the cockpit because it does things to your screens, of course. But I have a really nice pair of Sergetti aviator glasses that aren't polarized, and I put a $15 pair of stick-on bifocals, and they've lasted for a long, long time. So very useful. Highly recommend them, and they're again $15 on Amazon.
What was the name of those again, Bobby?
Hydrotech, TAC. Bifocal stick-ons. You'll be able to find those easily on Amazon. I don't think I've ever seen them in a store, but I'm sure you can find them on a store somewhere as well. I'll make sure we put something in the show notes to a link to those things. They're really, really cool. All right, a couple people said it, Ibram and Hayden, a little bit different with the way they said it, but do power-on stalls get easier? And then Hayden said, I hate stalls. And I got to admit, man, when I was a private student, if I knew we were going to work on stalls, my stomach started turning. I didn't want to go do it. I thought the wings were going to fall off the plane. The power on is like, why would God make any of us be doing this? This is so stupid. While we're in a plane and we're intentionally pointing the nose straight up in the air with full power. Why are we doing this? Now, 500 hours into my flying, I understand exactly why you do them. I appreciate them. I'm not afraid of them. There's a lot of knowledge that comes into this, but you've probably done more power on stalls than anybody, Wally, at 500 plus check rides and many students that you've trained over the years. What would you say to these two, what I assume are young men working on their private that hate stalls?
Yeah, well, I think probably what it came from, I think your instructor instilled something into you. I think your instructor was probably scared of stalls. I hate to say that, but that's I'm going to say it. Back in the day, all right, so when I soloed on December 7th, 1981, long time ago, almost 40 years ago, what I did is we did a supervised solo. We did 3 takeoffs and landings, and we did it again, and we did that 3 times. And then after that, my instructor said, all right, just come out to the airport and go out in the practice area and start flying around. And so I probably had quite a bit of solo time, and I quite frankly, I don't see a lot of private pilot applicants that have a whole lot of solo time. I did a whole bunch of stalls by myself in an airplane before my private pilot check ride. And I would question how many students today have done a stall by themselves. Now, should you be able to do that? Absolutely. Absolutely. You should be able to go out and do a stall by yourself without your instructor. And I would say to the instructor, if you don't think your student can do that, then they shouldn't be soloing. So maybe that's a comfort level that our students aren't at this point, and maybe they should be. It's a little bit like anything else. I mean, the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to be with it. Now, one thing I do see on power-on stalls on check rides, I see people pulling the nose up aggressively to get the airspeed down and stall the airplane. And really, what we're trying to do, a power-off stall is a landing stall. A power-on stall is a takeoff stall in a nutshell, okay? So to pull the nose up to maybe 20, 25 degrees pitch up, that's really just unrealistic. I mean, there's nothing that feels right about that in an airplane. Now, maybe if you're in IMC conditions and you can't see, maybe you might do that. But under visual conditions, I just can't see ever really doing that because there's just nothing that feels right about it. So, and I see people doing that on their check rides as this just aggressive pull-up. And I say, okay, as I debrief them, I say, okay, when you're practicing this, maybe not be so aggressive with that and have a little bit more patience with it and let the airplane decelerate at a slower rate and stall in that condition, rather than just this aggressive pull-up where the airplane, decelerates at such a fast rate. So I don't know if that helps, if that would help to do that. I actually went out in my airplane just a few weeks ago, my 172, and I just went out and practiced a bunch of stalls by myself. And, the airplane is just so gentle. I'm just kind of amazed because what I did was doing a bunch of power off stalls, and I would let it stall, and I would recover, I would let it stall, and I would let it recover without adding power. And in a 172, at least my airplane, I mean, it just is just so gentle. And I'm not sure that's a good thing. I learned to fly in a Tomahawk, and it was not gentle. It broke pretty well, and I don't know if it was because I was uncoordinated, but it turned. It turned. You had to use rudder to recover from that stall.
Yeah, I think as pilots learn, and they get more into the commercial time frame, and they're learning about stability and probably more intricate details about center of gravity, and it just seems to me, I got more comfortable because I knew, one, the plane wasn't going to break apart because I was below maneuvering speed, and two, I kind of just understood that the nose was designed to fall forward, so it was going to recover as long as I just let go of the controls for the most part, right? Power on, a little different. You get a lot of left turning tendencies and things, but right rudder solves that all the time, and you just need to be in control. I think slowing down the movements is one that I've learned over time, that you really, when you take off, you rotate, and you probably set 5, 7, 10 degrees of angle of attack, and you take off, you lift off the ground, and you keep doing that. And if you would work the power on stall very similarly and go slowly through 10, 15, 20, then you're going to feel the stall and be able to recover. I thought the wings were going to fall off. I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to be in a safe airplane, and I think that the reality is that you need to get comfortable with it, because it's very likely that could happen to you on a landing or a takeoff one day, and you got to be ready for it. So I didn't think I was going to be a real pilot if I couldn't go to the practice area and do it myself. And I knew that I was going to hate it, and I built my courage up, and I took the plane to the practice area, and I did it in 1966 Foxtrot, and I went out there by myself, and I did a power install, and I probably got to just the brake and recovered. But go out there and do it by yourself when you're ready and competent and proficient, and you'll feel a lot better about it for sure.
And I hear a lot of CFI candidates when they go out and do their spin training. A lot of them come back after that and say, "Oh, now I feel good about stalls." So that's that is, you do need a spin training endorsement to get your CFI, and obviously that needs to be in a airplane that's certified to do all that. So, and I'd encourage you to do some aerobatic training. I'll admit I've never done it. I've never been in an airplane upside down, and that's on my bucket list.
Well, I went to my first air show this past weekend in Houston, and I was amazed how cool it was and everything that went on. And I got to see one of our friends, Debbie Wren Harvey, do her show in her aircraft. It was amazing, the things that she performed, and I think I'm going to go sign up for a lesson. Maybe we can actually have her on the show and do a little bit of aerobatics talking, and both go take a lesson with her at the same time and get upside down and do some of that stuff. It was the amount of control that she has and what that airplane's capable of doing was amazing. And some of the acrobatic planes I saw, they were rated for 5, 6, 7x gravity to be able to pull that kind of a load, both inverted and upright, which means they're pretty strong, stable aircraft. Maybe not stable, but they're not going to fall apart without a whole lot of force being applied upon them. So Alberto H. asked, other than water in the fuel system, what have you found wrong during a pre-flight? And I'm sure, Wally, you've seen it all. I think some of the things that I've seen and as a flight school owner that I hear about that is really common that I don't think makes sense to a brand new or fairly young private pilot are things like some really abnormal conditions that you might think are intentional, but they aren't. I've heard about tape being on the static port. And the reason tape might be on the static port is because someone washed the aircraft and didn't want to spray a bunch of water in that static port, and they left that tape on. That's going to create some havoc in the cockpit if you don't catch that piece of tape on that static port and remove it. I have seen a strut that's been bottomed out, and I think early on in my career I was taught, watch the strut and hold your 3 fingers up, and if you got 3 fingers, your strut's good. And I just don't know that I really understood the mechanics of the strut, but the strut has a little bit of air and a little bit of fluid in it, and that front wheel's supposed to be able to go up and down a little bit and help students when they land a little firm to lessen the blow and the force on the aircraft. But those struts, they have a little O-ring seal kit in them. The seal kit's less than $5, but it's doing a lot of work to hold that air and that fluid in there. So during the summertime, they work well, and then the winter comes and it gets cold and those things contract and you might see some fluid. It's not the end of the world. Those probably 3 or 4 hours of labor and a $5 strut kit will get that thing fixed and going. But you don't want to land without that strut having some fluid and some air in it. Other than that, Wally, what's some of the things you've heard about or seen or watched applicants miss or watched student pilots miss that you were training?
Well, I'll give you 2 stories of mine, things that I missed that were kind of a big deal. I was, and this is going to be some self-disclosure here. I hope the statute of limitations has expired on this first one. This was many, many, many years ago. I was training a CFI candidate, and we were flying a Cessna 150, and I'm a little bit ashamed to admit, but it was a situation where I just said to the guy, I says, okay, go ahead and go out and pre-flight. And so, again, he's a commercial pilot, commercially instrument rated, working on a CFI. So he goes out and walks around this little 150, and then I come out and hop in the left seat because he's the CFI candidate. He's in the right seat. And we took off. And as we were climbing out, he said, something's wrong with this airplane. The rudder isn't right. And I just I blew him off, and I said, no big deal. Let's go. And then after about another 30 seconds, he says, no, there's something wrong with this airplane. And so I said, well, let me see. So I took the controls, and I kind of moved the rudders a little bit with my feet, and sure enough, something wasn't right. And I looked back, and there's this big flag trailing us that said "Remove before flight." Lo and behold, we had some homemade rudder gust locks for our Cessna 150s that were in the back of the airplane, and we hardly ever used them. Well, evidently the student had flown the airplane before us, thought it would be appropriate to install the rudder gust lock. So he did. And so here we are flying, and we had a rudder gust lock installed. And we were able to kind of work the rudders and make the thing vibrate out. So without too much problem, we got the rudder gust lock to come out of the rudder and landed in someone's front yard, I guess. And we went on with the lesson. But, there's a lesson to the CFIs to, double check things. But that was, I think about that a lot. It worked out just fine. But that was something. Another thing that I did a little bit more recently, I was up in Alaska working on my seaplane rating. And the airplane was parked in the water, obviously. And the way you fueled airplanes up there is you put these 5-gallon gas cans out, and the fuel truck would come by, and they'd fill up these 5-gallon gas tanks, and then you would have to take the 5-gallon tanks and actually put the fuel in the airplane. And so I fueled the airplane. I put in about 30 gallons, 6 5-gallon cans, 15 gallons on each side. And it's just very cumbersome to have to walk on the floats, get up on the airplane, pick up this 5-gallon can, put the fuel in there, get down, go get another can. And I mean, it was to put in 30 gallons of fuel was about a 20, 25, 30-minute process. And through all that, when I got down, I left the fuel cap off. And I caught it because as I was looking from the airplane, from the tail of the airplane, you get a great vantage point of the top of the wing of the airplane. And I looked up there and I saw the cap off, and I went, holy cow. And I went back and was able to put the cap on. So one thing I always teach my students is, as you're walking around that airplane, when we're talking about a high wing, a Cessna, when you get to the back of the airplane, take a look up at the wing, because that is the best vantage point to see those gas caps, is from the back of the airplane. You can't see them from the front of the airplane unless you're extremely tall. So that would be another.
That's a really good one. And we recently had somehow a gas cap disappeared. And you would think, how would a gas cap disappear? It either came off during flight, the fueler didn't put it back on. We had a gas cap missing, and luckily they found it during the pre-flight. But don't trust anything as it's related to fuel. I won't make Wally go through how important fuel is again, but it's important. So make sure that you check those gas caps as well. All right, we're down to 2 questions. Chad M. I've been tabbing out my FAR aim against the ACS in preparation for my check ride. This ACS is huge. Does anyone know what % of this I should expect the DPE to go over? Great question, Chad. Why don't we ask a DPE? Wally, how much of the ACS are you really going to go over on a check ride?
Well, we're going to go over all of it. We're going to cover every task. And, within a task, there are knowledge elements, there are risk management elements, and there are skills elements. And as an examiner, I am required to cover 1 knowledge element, one risk management element, and all of the skills elements. So we're going to go through it all. And a lot of it overlaps. You can look at when I'm formulating my plan of action, the first thing I look at is I go down and look at the skills elements, and I say, okay, I have to cover all of these. And usually by covering all the skills elements, it does cover one of the risk management, one of the knowledge elements. But maybe not. There may be something else that I need to add into that. So I'm the ACS is the test. It is the standard, and quite honestly, a lot of applicants, it's pretty obvious they're not very familiar with the ACS, and it is a big document. But flying an airplane is kind of a big deal.
Yes, it is, and we've done a lot of episodes, and we've done a lot of talking about the ACS. It might seem cumbersome on your private, but it really is the open book questions, and you know what the answers are. You know where to find the answers. Use that thing to your advantage. I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever tabbed out the FAR aim for my instrument or my private or my commercial. For some CFI work that I'm doing, I'm putting some tabs in there, but I think the key is to know how to go find the answers if you need the answers or you need the regulatory help. But know the ACS. It's going to be very helpful for your check ride if you do know that ACS.
Yeah, and it's just it's important to know how to get the answer. I tell my applicants that the check ride is an open book test. They can look things up, and I do say, honestly, if we have to look everything up, we're going to be here all day. We're going to run out of time. So it's not practical to have to look everything up. But I don't have a problem whatsoever if someone says, let me look that up.
Good deal. Jason G, are there any decent all-around budget flight bags? Thank you. Great question. We did a short that I'll make sure we post on our social media pages at Behind the Prop that you can watch about the essential items in a flight bag and some tips about a flight bag. But really and truly, the best budget flight bag is probably somewhere in a closet at your house where you have a backpack from some events you've been to or something. It's a great starting point, right? I don't think you need to go out and buy a $250 flight bag to be a real pilot. I think real pilots carry as little as possible with them when they get into the cockpit because they're professionals and they know that they want to take the minimalistic stuff. But minimalistic stuff might be a backpack full of stuff, right? Your headset. Wally made a good point before we started recording that the first big question you got to ask yourself is, do I want the headset in my headset bag in a bag, or do I want my headset out of a headset bag in my bag? That's really going to dictate whether you have to buy something a little fancier or nicer. Where's that headset going to be? I literally use, and I have a pilot supply store full of bags. I could pick whichever one I want and have the nicest one and carry it if I wanted to. I literally use a backpack from Magellan. If you live in the United States, there's a sporting goods store called Academy. I have a Magellan backpack that probably cost me less than $30. That is my favorite flight bag. I've used it for years, and it's because of the compartments. The backpack has many little zipper pouches. I can have my foggles and my sunglasses in one pouch and my headset in the big back piece, and my iPad has a slot to go into. It's everything I want fits in a hole, and I really like that about that flight bag. Wally, I know we've talked about this last year during our holiday special, but you use a kind of a briefcase type bag. What's your thoughts on a budget flight bag?
Yeah, I would say you're right, and most people probably have a decent flight bag in their house right now. I personally like to minimize things, so I don't. I looked for a flight bag that has a dedicated spot for a headset. So my headset goes in my flight bag. Separate from the headset bag. in all likelihood, for most people, the headset is going to be the most expensive thing in the flight bag. So you definitely want to make sure that that's protected. I do see a lot of people that have backpacks that just throw their headset in the backpack, and I just cringe at that, because I usually look at the cords and they're all crimped and they're kind of messed up, and I'm thinking, geez, I've got a nice headset that's still a nice headset, and it's pretty old. So, I've got my airline headsets. I use a Telex headset with an in-ear piece, and this headset is it's over 40 years old and still just fine. So if you take care of the stuff, it will last.
All right, student pilot community, hopefully you've enjoyed our answers to your questions. Please subscribe to our show and keep asking your questions. We'll keep giving you quality answers, hopefully. As always, fly safe and stay behind the prop.
Thanks for checking out the Behind the Prop podcast. Be sure to click subscribe and check us out online at BehindTheProp.com. Behind the Prop is recorded in Houston, Texas. Creator and host is Bobby Doss. Co-host is Wally Mulhern. The show is for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to replace actual flight instruction. Thanks for listening, and remember, fly safe.